Hello, I'm Daniel Sawko. I'm the CEO and co-founder of shipshape.vc, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Mr. Matt Oxley. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's a real pleasure to have you to discuss your US adventure, your journey of building a company in the United States. Matt Oxley is the president and co-founder of Opal and a partner over at USXP Partners who help European companies with their US expansion. You've successfully scaled a business in the United States as a Brit. What made you go there?
Great question. Firstly, thank you for having me. What made me go there? I always describe it as I was pulled, because the history of Opal, just to give you some background, is I set up Opal in 2011. That's after I think venturing to the US a number of times because I had a consultancy beforehand. And in the US, I met my two co-founders. And for about a 2-year period, like any scrappy entrepreneurs, we were just throwing things at a wall and seeing what would stick. And we were doing that in 2 markets. I was operating from the UK, they were operating from the US. And I think over a period of about 18 months to 2 years, it was so evident that the opportunity, the market, the money, the budgets, the talent, the real opportunity was in the US. So, again, I describe it as pulled because what we did, we started to get a lot more traction in the US. We started to get a lot more momentum that resulted in me in 2013 selling everything I had and actually moving from a flat that's probably half a mile away from here, we're in Elephant and Castle, to actually go over and start my American chapter.
What was the biggest sort of barrier to you taking the plunge previously?
I think it's mindset. I think we were joking on text this morning where my number, if I could get a t-shirt and give it to every founder, it would be get on a plane. It's mindset. I think you can look at the data all day long, you can look at the business plan all day long, you can look at your deck all day long, but get in the market, experience it. So I think the biggest blocker was mindset. And like all, I'm not trying to be kind of ignorant here, but because I think like all entrepreneurs, I needed the data and the science. And for me, that comes into being pulled because we were winning customers. Okay, but I was lucky enough to have 2 other co-founders in the US that were, really kind of helping shape that as well.
And 2 co-founders, American?
Yeah, both American.
Okay, and did you find that you had the right mindset for the US market to start with, or is that something that you've had to work on?
It's a great question. I've always been just so, I think, Americanized as an individual. It's very much a world I look at and a country I look at, always been inspired by. It's the Hollywood effect, it's the sheen of that. I've been going over there since I was 11 years old, so the sheen of it never left me. So there was always that kind of, I think, desire one day to go and work over there, have a business over there, have a chapter of life over there. So it didn't take me a lot. I mean, my co-founders joke now that I'm more American than I am, British. But to answer the question, is you have to really kind of lean into your American character, because the British side of me is very computer says no. And let's talk about the weather. But what you've got to do is you've got to create an American character of yourself. And that took me a while to do.
What would you say are your most American characteristics?
Optimism. Can do, will do, sleeves rolled up. Those are probably and I think, optimism would probably be the main one.
And lots of founders are going to have or see those characteristics in themselves. Where did you find, versus UK market, where did you find those characteristics were sort of more positively received?
I think it's in 2 instances, raising capital and in front of customers. So we were selling to the enterprise, so I'll take the customers first. We were selling enterprise. So you've got to go in there and rather than being apologetic and meek and British, you've got to be there. Hey, American side of you has to come through. Yeah. Because Americans love innovation. They love supporting, small organizations because they can associate their professional development and career to backing you early. And also what they're looking to do is really get kind of, one up and ladders up on their professional journey. So they're very excited to do that. So you've got to go in there confident, bold, and really kind of, live and breathe your passion, which is your company. Because the reason why I say, develop an American character is you've got to understand what you're going up against, which is, thousands of American entrepreneurs that have been selling themselves from day one. Because if you think about America, and I know this because I had 2 daughters over there and they were in kindergarten and they did show and tell. Show and tell is about why my pencil is better than your pencil. And they've been doing that since they were like 5 years old. So that is the psyche of Americans. That is the personality that they're very good. They're very good, and quite rightly, at presenting themselves. So that is what you're competing against. And that is why you have to become, American and develop your American character. Matt, the American character. Daniel, the American character. So that is what it took me, I think, 9 months to actually understand and be confident in, the commercial environment.
And in those 9 months, did you give yourself things to do that were going to help you, or was it more a case of just learning by doing?
It was learning by doing. I mean, I never went out there going, oh yeah, I'm going to develop an American character. It wasn't part of my thought process. It was like, I'm going to land and I'm going to figure this out. Okay. And that is ultimately what I had to do. It's only now, after 10 years of going on that journey and then coming back, my passion is helping entrepreneurs go on that chapter of the journey that I've been on. And it's only through experience that I can come back and go, right, it sounds the most stupid thing is, develop an American character. The second thing that I say to founders is, and again, it sounds really stupid, but learn American. And what I mean by learn American is understand and respect the culture that you're in. Like, me and you can meet and spend 5 minutes talking about football and the weather. What are you going to do in America when you go to New Mexico and the weather's the same every single day and they don't understand what football is, or it's a pigskin to them? What are you going to talk about? So then you have to learn American to be able to get yourself kind of, a step up in those conversational early sales. You've got to relate to people. If you're selling enterprise software, if you're selling your business, they're human connections. So you've got to learn American to adapt and adjust.
Can you give me an example of how would you start a conversation with an American prospective customer of yours?
It's a shame that the Mariners got beat last night, wasn't it? Like, they did really well to get to kind of, the deciding game. I haven't won it a number of years. Toronto Blue Jays are through. Okay, first time since 1993 they're actually through to the World Series. It's going to be a great game against the Dodgers. What do you think?
Right. So you're still referencing commonalities within culture, but completely different.
Exactly. And what that does, that allows you to respect the culture, but also kind of meet people where they are. And I think those 2 things are really, really important when you're raising money, selling, trying to kind of attract talent, etc. You've got to immerse yourself in this world, because I think there's a common misconception because we speak the same languages, we're very similar. We're not. I think it's a false sense of familiarization that has happened between the UK and America. So you have to learn American, and that's going to allow you to professionally, and I think personally, be able to bridge that gap.
Tell us about how it is as a founder in the United States raising capital. Where have you noticed big differences versus raising in the UK?
Yeah, so Opal, the Opal journey was very much we raised angel money from both UK and the US. But it was evident that all the opportunity, all the checks, our market was in the US. So we did our A round and B round both in the US with Madrona, who led our A, one of the biggest firms in Seattle, amazing partner. And then, we played with the big boys with Excel from San Francisco in the B round. And the thing that I'd say, which is very different, is I think the appetite for risk. The appetite for risk and the focus on the opportunity is just evident. versus, and I do joke about it, is like, it's very much a computer says no. Well, our metrics don't really kind of spit out, what we want, versus the US funds going, well, the opportunity's not big enough. The opportunity's not big enough. So you're on two ends of the spectrum. And I think for me, where my mentality is very much suited to raising in America, because it is about the opportunity. It's about building a company. It is about going fast and going quick and scaling and, all those amazing things. So those were the kind of like, it was a mentality difference between the two.
Do you think that you'd have had the same success had you stayed in the UK?
No, not at all.
What was the market that, Opal found? Why is the market in the US so much bigger and so much faster in terms of you mentioned traction was just, you had traction take off in the United States and UK was just slower. Like decision makers, how decision makers, you mentioned as well around, in the US, they want to take on the new thing because they associate their careers with it. Where are we missing that in the UK?
We're missing, we put risk before opportunity. And I think, and I can't speak now, okay, because I think that was 10 years ago. We were raising capital, and that was where the landscape was. I've only been back 18 months, and I do believe it has shifted for the better. And I'm seeing a lot more positive signals. I'm talking to a lot of VCs, and I'm really, really encouraged by the state of the UK ecosystem and European ecosystem as well. I really am. So I can only speak 10 years ago as to where it was. And, the reason was, I think that we succeeded in America rather than the UK was, again, that's where the budgets were. And that's where the stakeholders were. That's where the pain was. And Opal is, B2B SaaS. So we were selling to the enterprise. We were selling marketing technology to big enterprise organizations. And, what I said before about people put their identity, to their profession. Those two are very closely linked in America. So people are more willing to maybe back you if you're smaller. And to back that up, our first 5 customers at Opal were Beats by Dre at Apple, Nike, Starbucks, Levi's, and Nestle.
Wow.
So those were our first 5 customers. And those were people making a bet on a small organization with founders based on, I think, an element of charisma, personality, innovation, determination, and just kind of overall obsession around what they were doing with a beautiful technology to kind of go with it. And I think that is what allowed a lot of people to go, all right, yeah, okay, I'll sign a deal with you. I'll sign a deal with you. I've never heard of you, but I'll sign a deal with you. Because we were very fortunate to be riding 2 innovation waves at the same time. SaaS, because, that was very, very new, software as a service. It was very, very new at that time. And then social media. It really was a time where brands like, Starbucks were like, okay, there's this thing called Facebook. I have no idea how we deal with it. What are we doing? Are we sharing pictures of cats? Are we selling coffee? What is it we are doing? So we managed to ride those 2 waves. And it's only now you reflect on it, you can see those waves happening. And that's kind of like really evident in our story. And I think that is people, maybe investors seeing that prior to us, but then also professionals within that world going, all right, yeah, we need this. Let's go.
Where did you choose to live in the US and why?
Portland, Oregon, which is, if anybody knows, it's West Coast, just south of Seattle, north of California. And the reason why was because that's where my 2 other business partners were. That's where our first customer, which was Nike, was. And that's also where we'd done previous consultancy world, because Opal is a love child of two consultancies coming together, being really frustrated with the consultancy world. You're only as good as your last gig, and creating Opal. So that's largely why. I mean, be close to your customers. It was a hotbed for talent and still is, because you've got some amazing companies that are headquartered there: Under Armour, Adidas, Nike, Intel. It really is a very creative world.
So you knew that you had a market on your doorstep where you chose to live.
Yeah, we knew there was a large population of blue chip organizations around us, and I think that is so important when you're looking at where to base, where to locate.
And in terms of thinking about the US is, it's a continent-sized country. Yeah. What steps would you recommend that founders take prior to taking the plunge? Because you can only live in one place.
Yeah.
Like, how would you, if you were going at this again today, what sort of analysis would you run in terms of, okay, where are my customers based, or where potential customers are based? Or would you go with, actually, we've already built up a half dozen customers in the United States. Mm-hmm. They all seem to be around this location. We'll go there. Like, how would you approach that?
Yeah, my answer differs based on your ICP. Because if you're selling to the enterprise, it's very different as if you're selling, low ticket items, and you can do that digitally, right? So let me focus on the enterprise.
Yeah.
I would make a point where America is so big, be somewhere where you can commute. Because, you're not going to luck out and get all of your customers in Oregon. It's just not going to happen. There's big blue chip organizations everywhere. So be near a hub, but also be near a kind of a density of them. And also then think about talent, right? Where is our talent going to come from? Are we fintech? Are we, in the AI bubble? Do we need to be in San Francisco? Are we in the financial markets and need to be in New York? So there's all these considerations. The other thing that I think is of utmost importance is if you're moving there, but you've got existing European or UK operations, think about the overlap. Because if you're West Coast, their day starts at 9 a.m., which is your 5 p.m., which makes a really bloody long day for you if you're over there. So think about operational overlap. And what I do recommend to organizations is think about the East Coast, because you're going to get a lot more operational overlap there. Also, what there's going to be is, that's time zone, but also the flights out there are considerably, shorter as well. They're going to be 6 hours versus 10, 11 hours.
Yeah.
So I think those two things, if I was doing it again, I would choose to be East Coast for those reasons.
In the 10 years that you spent out in the United States, what were the most challenging years out there? And what were the challenges that you ran into that you just hadn't anticipated?
Yeah, I think I'd say it was the first 18 months, and I'd split them into personal and professional. I think professional was, I'm adapting. I had to create my character. I didn't have 10 years of experience to come back to and go, all right, I've got to learn American and create a character.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, okay, I'm adapting, I'm evolving, I'm adjusting. And it took me probably 9 months to feel comfortable in a sales environment, because I didn't know, NCAA basketball. I wasn't in a fantasy football league. I wasn't aware. I hadn't spent the time and really kind of embraced the culture as I should. So that took me a long time, because initially what you're doing is you're doing founder-led sales. So you've got to be the spearhead. You've got to engage. You've got to connect on a human level with everybody. And that was a challenge for the first 9 months, because I was, this Harry Potter-esque character. It's like, you speak like this. It's very much like you're isolated over there. So that took me 9 months to kind of really kind of, consider and get comfortable with. The second one was more from a, personal human perspective, where, I was lucky enough that my girlfriend at the time, who's now fortunate enough to be my wife, came over with me and was like, all right, cool, let's go on this chapter. Let's go on this journey. How long is it going to last? I don't know, a couple of years. And that was a challenge. And that was a challenge because you were affecting somebody else's life. And we'd move from our, lovely, very small, flat in Bermondsey to Portland, not knowing anybody. I knew my two co-founders, and that was it. No family, no friends, no group to go to watch football or rugby with, nobody who really knows, oh yeah, how did United do? Nobody to really relate to. So you're still kind of like learning, and it was lonely.
What did your now wife do?
She was able to keep her job and work remotely.
Wow. Okay, that's big. 2013,
That was,
right?
I mean, that was huge for us because it allowed some consistency, some level of consistency for her. And then we had one rule. We had one rule going over there, which is all she had to do was say, "I want to go home," and that would have been it. It'd be like, "Cool, right, let's go," because to me, it wasn't worth putting the relationship on the line for, and the relationship was more important than Opal. And I never wanted her to feel trapped. Like, okay, we're going over to, and it was my adventure, it was my journey. You know, she was just great to be supportive and going over, and I know you're going through a very similar thing.
Yeah.
So you're like, all right, I'm making notes.
Yeah.
But she was supportive and willing to go on this. But it was never her dream. She was never like, oh my God, I want to go and work in America. And also, you know, if she didn't have the remote job, she wouldn't have been able to get a work visa either. Because this is another thing that I think founders and there's misconception about. There's 90% of the time, your training partner will not be able to get a work visa. So what do they do? What do they do? And then you've got that ability where it very much is you put that pressure on your back because you've got the pressure of the board, you've got the pressure of the customers to deliver product, you've got pressure of your staff who you've now got on. But then when you get home, you know, quite rightly, you've got the pressure of your spouse where it's like, hey, you took me out of my friendship group with my mates. I'm now lonely and alone. I can't work. What's going on?
And you've obviously now built up a great network and on the personal side as well in the United States. Like, you Americans are famously extremely friendly.
Yeah.
Was that your experience over in Portland?
Yeah, I mean, they are extremely friendly, but to get deep-rooted relationships takes time anyway.
Yeah.
So it did take us time to find a circle of friends that are now some of my best mates in the whole world. Right, absolutely love them, right? But it took us time. And it was probably 2.5 years in until we found that network of friends. Everybody was very friendly, but there is also a superficial level to that as well. So it wasn't until like we're able to get those like really deep-rooted relationships that for me it was just like, all right, we found our people and we're extremely happy because you've got both worlds being fulfilled. And I think that is that is such an important part of it. And I think one of the things that I love to do is really highlight this for partners, not partners, for founders, because what I don't want anybody doing is going over there, you know, surprised. You know, it really is like, think these things through, right? How do we find our network? Who do we know? How can we go in there prepared?
At what point was it sort of like, we're in this for the long haul and we're happy to be here for the long haul?
I mean, we were always kind of maybe transient in, do we stay in America or do we come home? And it was probably 7 years. I had 2 children, or my wife had 2 children over in the US, so I created 2 Americans. And it wasn't until that they arrived on the scene that it really brought home where do we want them educated? Where do we want them living? Who do we want them close to? And it's probably about 7 years in that we were like, okay. And it was probably a kicker with COVID as well, where it was all right, okay, I think we should be going home at some point. And it was always an open conversation. There's always an open conversation. And it was 7 years in that I think mentally we made the decision. And then our move back also was probably 2 years of planning. Right. It wasn't just like, hey, let's get on a boat. It was like, no, right, okay, how do we logistically... We went there with 2 suitcases and a holdall, and we came back with a shipping container, a dog, 2 kids, more bags than you can shake a stick at. So and we bought a house out there, so we had to sell that, you know. So the logistics of a move became a lot more significant than just kind of like, you know, let's get on a plane. And it was very, very different.
My wife and I almost certainly would need a shipping container now just to move out there, and like that's, you know, big part of the call is sort of the logistics. Okay, we have a house here,
yeah.
Selling the house, we're renting the house, etc. Like these are big questions that, again, aren't going to come up at board in your company. Matt, obviously, thank you. It's really interesting to hear the human side, the personal side to it. And so, kids now, 6 and 8, is that right?
6 and 8, yeah.
6 and 8, okay. And they're more American, more British?
No, it's been so interesting. So you look at videos 2 years ago, and I look at my daughter, and I'm like, who the hell were you? Coming out with this, very American, hey, Dad. I'm like, whoa. But now, very, very, oh, hello, Daddy.
Yeah.
It's very, very different.
Was it that point that you're like, all right, we've got to go home?
It was.
Yeah.
It was like, came home, didn't know who Man United were, didn't know what Only Fools and Horses was. I'm like, okay, all right, on a plane, let's go.
Thanks for answering all of my questions. Are there any things that we haven't covered that you think actually founders who are thinking about this really ought to know about?
The number one thing I get asked is, okay, when do we go? So I think unpacking and talking, that will be really good because, you shared some data with me this morning, and I think that's worth unpacking. Is the sentiment of going to the US is exceptionally high, and it's always
8
high.
and 10. Yeah, 8 and 10 companies in the UK that want to expand internationally are thinking United States.
Yeah.
It's huge.
And obviously, if you're preparing a TAM slide and you're going out and raising capital and doing the kind of VC pitches, that TAM includes America. Okay, you're putting there as your total addressable market.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one side. But then the reality of the number of companies that do it and the gap between your data and the reality, I don't know what that is, but I would suggest that is a huge disparate gap.
Yeah, and actually one of the other sort of tidbits to sort of tease out from the data that we pick up is there's almost like there's a bell curve of the number of markets that a company thinks it can tap into for a given raise amount.
Yeah.
And it then tails off. So companies that are raising, I think it's like 5 million plus, actually the number of markets that they're seriously thinking about tails off. There's almost like an overly optimistic earlier stage where companies are thinking, okay, we can take on 3 markets in a year, no problem. And I think you then get that maturity later on with actually, we've got to do this one by one.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. I think lots of the companies that do tell us that they're looking at the United States, on one, that's never going to become a reality.
Yeah.
But there's an interesting maturity aspect there as well.
Yeah.
And we definitely need to look at how does that reflect to revenue as well?
Yeah.
Again, are they more serious once they've got more revenue under their belt, knowing what customer relationships they've got to maintain, etc.
Yeah, and I think there's this constant trepidation and fear that I don't think a lot of founders talk about because it's a foreign market. There's an ocean away. There's all of these amazing hero worshipping entrepreneurs over there. But then my response to that is, if I could make one T-shirt that I could give to every founder, it'd be get on a plane. Because you'll never know unless you go and kind of seize that opportunity, try out the market, have conversations, because then you're going to make a better, more informed decision.
Yeah.
So I honestly think there's a lot of, dare I say it, noise around US expansion.
Yeah.
But in truth and in reality, there's not many founders out there that are executing on it, getting on a plane and making it happen, even if that is just to test the waters.
Yeah, and come back with the answer, it's not the market for us.
Because
that's fine. It's worth the investment.
Because that's an absolutely fair assessment. Because guess what? You've got on a plane, you've had the conversations, and you've realised maybe that might not be for you.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine, but at least you know, rather than keeping on talking about it, having it carried on as your TAM slide. So that to me is what I would kind of point many founders to do. And of course there's exceptions against the rule, and this isn't blanket, but it's get on a plane.
Yeah.
Go and network. Spend 3 weeks in the States, travel between 3 cities, go and have as many meetings as you can. Come back, digest, breathe, then ultimately make a decision.
And we've been dipping our toe into the market. I think I've had 4 visits now to the US. Got 3 customers. First one took about a year to land, just under a year. And we given some really good advice by Bill, who
Bill Kenny.
Bill Kenny, who obviously and
lives on a boat.
Lives on a boat, and whenever I'm on a call with him, you can sort of see the ocean waves in the background. It's pretty
and
awesome existence.
every email is boat related.
Yeah, ahoy! Yeah, it's brilliant, which I just absolutely love. And he's given us some really good advice in terms of being targeted about, okay, build your density, much like you did with Portland.
Yeah.
Like that's been so good for us because ultimately the trips are expensive.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a cheap way of assessing, do you want to go for the market or not? But if you're going back to the same place or around the same area time and time again, you're getting to a better answer sooner in terms of both if it's positive or indeed negative. It's like, is that something that you'd also advise others to do in terms of getting a proper test?
100%. I think, but also going and experiencing the cities or the locations that you're thinking about. Like I know you're going East Coast to Maryland or DC, but also Boston, New York. I mean, and I'm sure you've done that because I think you've got to get a flavour of each city. Yeah. For me, I had a strong pull to Portland because Nike, I'd done work there previously, 2 business partners over there. So for me, it was like fairly kind of self-explanatory. But if we're thinking about it fresh, I'd really go and explore those areas of interest for you. And I do believe with your point as well, which is immerse yourself.
Yeah.
Immerse yourself. Right. Go to the meetups. Go meet the local VCs. Go and meet the government-related kind of investment funds. Go and meet the startups. Like you can hustle and get all these meetings. Who are the top 5 companies in I don't know, whatever it might be, Baltimore?
Yeah.
Go and find them. Go and hit up the CEOs on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm in town. This is what I do. Can I buy you a coffee? So you can get that. And again, I think this is where it comes into the character. That amount of hustle in Americans is bonkers.
And they appreciate it as well. If it's almost par for the course. You've got to hustle a bit to prove that you almost pass that quality filter.
Yeah, but I think there's UK hustle which takes us up to a kind of like a 10. But then
I hope you're well.
But then they've got a scale that goes beyond that. Of grit, determination. Because also if you think about the American upbringing, which is the show and tell, the American dream, I can do anything. It's like it energizes you. It energizes you, and that's what Americans are built on. So it really is, and this comes back to kind of learning American. It's like, okay, you got to go beyond your 10 and get to the 17 and out hustle.
Well, and for many Brits that takes us out of our comfort zone, but you've still got to do it, and you get used to it.
And then be the character, even if there are doubts. It's like, be the character. It's like, I can out hustle you.
Matt, thank you so much for your time, your insights. Matt Oxley is the president and co-founder of Opal and a partner at US Expansion Partners. Matt Oxley at LinkedIn, is that the place where people can find you?
MattOxley.co.
Cool.
Best place to find me.
Brilliant.
I've got my own website.
And there'll be details in the link below this.
Fantastic. Cool. Thanks for having me. Do appreciate it.
Cheers, Matt.